everyone. My name is Julia Friedlander. I'm the C. Boyden Gray Senior Fellow and Deputy Director of the Geoeconomic Center at the Atlantic Council. It is my pleasure today to welcome Cecilia Malmström, a household name in Washington and trade aficionado, former Commissioner for Trade in the European Commission. It's a pleasure to have you here today to discuss your candidacy for the OECD and for the future role of the organization. Maybe to just start out our conversation, if I could ask you a little bit about why the organization needs new leadership and why it's important for Americans to understand.
Thank you so much. It's great being with you. Well, OECD is actually one of the few international organizations who's been working very well during the pandemic. It has helped to deliver analysis, policies, comparisons to the member states. It's an organization that dates from the age of the Marshall help after the Second World War. It has today 37 member countries, and it's a very unique organization. It's kind of a think tank that brings together thousands of brilliant researchers, analysts who provide data, reports, comparisons, regular evaluations, peer reviews in a wild field that is very useful for member countries when they do reforms, when they make decisions, and so on. And of course, now as the current Secretary General ends after 15 years as Secretary General, and the post was open, I thought it would be a fantastic opportunity to be there at this opportunity when OECD can really assist the member countries in the recovery after the COVID crisis and help for the recovery to be resilient, long-term, inclusive, sustainable. And I'm convinced it can continue to do that and will play an important role for Europeans and Americans and others who are members of it.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and I think that that's an element of the role of the organization that I think that many listeners might not quite understand. You know, all multilateral organizations or supranational organizations aren't created equal. You know, you working at the executive level in the European Union. I mean, how do you think that those, you know, that sort of leadership translates into working in a multilateral and strictly in an international economic framework? Where so many sticky issues are being discussed on a daily basis?
Well, what I learned in the European Commission after 10 years is that you need to listen to everybody, small and big countries alike, East and West, South and North, and that you need to understand the issues, the red lines, the offensive, the defensive interest. Where is the common ground? How can you forge a compromise and a consensus? And being Trade Commissioner, I worked with basically all countries of the world, so also outside the European Union, and tried to negotiate trade agreements, try to find compromises and way forwards. And I think those are skills and experiences that are useful in an international organization. Of course, OECD is the organization of member states. They make the decision. But the Secretary General plays the role of the engine, the outside face, and you know, hopefully someone who can inspire and who can help member states to agree. And that's where I think I have some experience that I would like to put at the disposal if I am selected.
More than some experience, I might add. That's a bit of modesty there. There's, you know, so many of the issues are inherently, they're collective action problems, right? Talking between climate finance, and perhaps even monetary and fiscal recovery. I know that you know, in recent days, the OECD has spoken out in favor of not necessarily against fiscal restraint, so to speak. So many of these problems are going to be only resolved in the multilateral arena. Maybe you could speak to a few of them, to climate finance, and maybe specifically also the digital services tax, which is a transatlantic touch point right now, so to speak.
Indeed. Well, OECD is this multilateral organization where member states come together to exchange experiences, to learn from each other, to build upon that research and expertise that is there. It doesn't have the money, but it has the brains, and it can advise. And there are numerous examples in the world where it has advised on important reforms, tax reforms, pension reforms, education reforms, etc. And of course, so many of the problems some of you mentioned are global today. So we need global solutions. And OECD reaches out well beyond its membership of 37 countries. It has standards and conventions and agreements that hundreds of countries line up to when it comes to fighting tax evasion, when it comes to anti-corruption and so on. And of course, if it can help in advising in green investment right now, together with many other international organizations, it can really bring about some useful advice. There are advice from the past, but this crisis is unique, of course. But if it can show what works, what does not work, how has some countries handled it, what do you need to think about, it is something that can be useful for a great audience, not only the 37. And the same goes for the digital tax. This is a difficult political problem, but G20 has said that we need a sort of modern new tax architecture in order to address the issue that some companies, they operate in one country, they have a headquarter in another one, or maybe no headquarter at all, and they don't pay taxes, and there is no way really to deal with a fair and predictable way. And instead of all countries setting up their own systems, if we could get an agreement among most countries of the world on how to address this, that would be historical. And actually in this process, there's almost 140 countries engaged, and a lot of technical work has been done. The deadline is to agree by the summer, so that would be before the new Secretary General, if it's possible. But of course, you need a lot of political will. The techniques and the technicalities are there, with the expertise from foreign ministries and finance ministries of all these countries. But you need some political will. And I think it is there, and hopefully there will be an agreement by the summer. If not, the new Secretary General would, gather and to analyze what's missing. What do we need to get a consensus here? How can we find that compromise? Because it is really in global interest to get one set of rules here instead of every country acting on its own, because that will lead to further tensions and divisions, instead of getting something that appears fair and predictable, and that where we can move forward from that, and that is a strength of OECD. It has done so in the past. This is a tricky issue, but all countries have agreed in principle to do it, so we just hope that the political will be there as well.
I agree, and I share that. I'm personally cautiously optimistic as a former Treasury Department employee myself, so I like to believe there's there. But Madam Commissioner, thank you so much for being with us today. You're a great friend of the United States, transatlantic name, and for the Atlantic Council. So wish you the best of luck in your candidacy, and have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Stay healthy.